Grant, we beseech thee, Almighty God, members of this house, that they may wisely deliberate for the good of this country and for the glory of thy holy name. Please join with me as we say together the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Pray, be seated. James.
Item 3, oath of allegiance or affirmation of a new member. Item 4, confirmation of minutes.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the minutes of the proceedings of a sitting of the House of Representatives held at the Grenada Trade Center on Friday, 1st September 2017 be taken as read.
Honorable members, the question is that the minutes of the proceeding of the House of Representatives held at the Trade Center on Friday, the 1st September 2017 be taken as read. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. Think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the said minutes of the proceedings of a sitting of the House of Representatives held at the Grenada Trade Center on Friday, 1st September 2017 be confirmed.
Honorable members, the question is that the said minutes be confirmed. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the minutes of the proceedings of a sitting of the House of Representatives held at the Grenada Trade Center on Friday, 8th September 2017 be taken as read.
Honorable members, the question is that the minutes of the proceeding of the House of Representatives held at the Grenada Trade Center on Friday, 8th September be taken as read. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the said minutes of the proceedings of a sitting of the House of Representatives held at the Grenada Trade Center on Friday, 8th September 2017 be confirmed.
Honorable members, the question is that the said minutes be confirmed. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Item 5, messages from the Governor General. Item 6, announcements by Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, as we are aware, one of our long-standing workers at the Parliament has passed on and would be buried tomorrow. He has served the Parliament as a driver and a dedicated one at that for about 17 years. I want to ask us to stand for a moment of silence. May his soul rest in peace. Thank you.
Item 7, presentation of petitions. Item 8, presentation of papers and reports from select committees.
Papers. Leader of government business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the following papers and reports be laid on the table. 1. Annual report, financial statements, and audit report thereon of Grenada Ports Authority for the year ended 31st December 2016. 2. Report of the Director of Audit, Grenada, on the financial statements and performance of the Basic Needs Trust Fund, BNTF, Grenada, for the period 1st January to 31st December 2016. 3. Report of the Director of Audit, Grenada, on the Market Access and Rural Enterprise Development Program, MAREP, for the year ended 31st December 2016. 4. Report of the Director of Audit, Grenada, on the performance audit of the River Road and Constantine landslip sub-projects of the Regional Disaster Vulnerability Reduction Project for the period June 2010 to September 2016. 5. Report of the Audit of Director, Grenada, on the financial statements of the Office of the Integrity Commission for the year ended 31st December 2015. 6. Report of the Director of Audit, Grenada, on the financial statements of the Grenada National Coalition on the Rights of the Child, GNCRC, for the year ended 31st December 2015 and the year ended 2016. 7. Annual report of the Grenada Solid Waste Management Authority for the year ended 31st December 2016. 8. Office of the Ombudsman Annual Report 2016. And 9. Grenada Postal Corporation Annual Report 2015.
Honorable members, these papers are so laid at the table.
Item 9, unopposed private business. Item 10, questions. Item 11, urgent questions under the provision of Standing Order number 20. Item 12, statements by ministers.
Honorable Representative for St. Andrew Southeast.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise this morning to make a very brief statement in my capacity as Minister for Religious Affairs and Acting Minister for Social Services. As we are aware, Minister for Social Services, Honorable Delma Thomas, is out of state. Mr. Speaker, I rise to extend on behalf of Ministry of Religious Affairs and Ministry of Social Services, and of course on behalf of all of us, our condolences to the family of the late little Ariel Bola, who would have passed away under very unfortunate circumstances. Mr. Speaker, I don't believe that there's anybody in Grenada, and even those outside, who would have heard about this incident that was not tremendously touched. And not just touched, but hurt. And I'm sure that for many, the feeling would linger on for a very long time. The hurt and the pain would linger on for a very long time. And Mr. Speaker, that being the case, we can just only imagine Mr. Speaker, we can only imagine what it's like for a mother or for a father to have that experience. Mr. Speaker, we can imagine this morning what it's like for her peers, the children who sat next to her the day before the incident. Mr. Speaker, the entire country, I'm sure, mourns over this particular passing. Last Monday, Mr. Speaker, as Cabinet very emotionally discussed this matter, we would have made a decision to give all the possible support that we can give to this family. Of course, the representative for the constituency, as well as the Minister for Social Services, would have already visited family and would have already spoken to the family, offering government support. In addition to that, Mr. Speaker, Ministry of Social Services and officers within that ministry would have already offered support to the family as it relates to counseling and other support services. Mr. Speaker, words and even actions in this case, while they cannot do as much as we would hope that they can do or wish that they can do, I still encourage all of us, not just as government but as a nation, to continue in whatever way we can to reach out to this family. For many it would be very difficult because in times like these, words could never be enough. But we encourage that as much as we can, that we do to offer support to this family. So, Speaker, I want to also, in my capacity as Minister for Religious Affairs, to encourage us that we do not take such occurrences as simply natural. But that, Mr. Speaker, we continue to look at what is happening, we continue to treat what is happening as also extremely spiritual. And therefore we encourage all of our citizens, our church leadership, to continue as they have been doing, but to intensify prayers for our nation, prayers for our people. Mr. Speaker, the circumstances surrounding this and others tells us that we have to more frequently go on our knees. But I want to encourage, Mr. Speaker, that as we deal with this matter, this very unfortunate matter, that we do not continue to speak for 8 days, as we often say, and then to become very silent or forget about what would have happened, but that we all continue to do everything that we can to continue to protect our children. As a government, we will continue to do, and we'll continue to look at additional ways to do. But I believe that this is a matter where every citizen should consider it a responsibility to continue to do even more to protect our children. We call this morning on our parents to do more. We call on our communities to do more. We call on our churches to do more. We call on our government and all of our people, all of us together, to do even more to protect our children. Mr. Speaker, but as we do more, I want to encourage us, because you have been seeing a lot of very emotional statements being made, and sometimes you get very concerned that one may lead to another and that we may continue to encourage a cycle of violence. I want to appeal to all of our people this morning, Mr. Speaker, that as painful as this is, as challenging as this is, that we refrain from taking any action that can complicate further this situation or that can worsen this situation. But at the same time, we appeal and we continue to pray that justice be served. So, Speaker, God is a God of justice, and we continue to pray that justice, not just in this case, but in all cases, related cases, that justice be served. I want to just encourage us to continue to work to protect the children of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, and that everybody, as we seek to point fingers, as we seek to say who should protect more, that we all remind ourselves that every child that we meet, whoever their parents may be, that we all commit ourselves to doing even more on their behalf. We pray that our soul would rest in peace, and we pray that God would strengthen the family, that he would give them the grace and the strength that is needed to cope in a situation like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for implementation and social development. Honorable Representative for the Tongue of St. George. Tongue of St. George.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, having been given the unenviable task yesterday of leading the post-cabinet briefing to discuss this very issue, I feel it imperative to also rise and say a few words. Mr. Speaker, having met the family, a brother, and seen the area and continue to give support, I also want to reiterate what I said yesterday, Mr. Speaker, which is that this is indeed a dark moment for us. But in this dark moment, let us use it to display our finer qualities as a people. Our finer qualities that insist that violence is unacceptable, especially this type of violence to someone so innocent, that the shock to our nation not cause us or any member of our community to make irrational decisions. Let us look to the future. Let us recognize that in the present, the due process must be respected, that the law enforcement, that the rule of law must be upheld, that we must give support to the family and to the various organs that need to assist in the healing process, that this healing process is essential, not just for the families affected, but for the community and the nation as a whole, that emotions are running extremely high in that community right now, and that we as parliamentarians, we as Grenadians, need to make sure that our interventions and our involvement seek to maintain a level of calm, rational thought that will allow us as a nation to put the necessary things in place to give the support where it is necessary to ensure that little Ariel did not die in vain, to ensure that her memory is one that is used for positive, for good, to ensure that the one lesson that her peers at the age of 7, 8, and 9, the one lesson that they can learn from us is that it is unacceptable, and that as a civilized society, we have put things in place, one, to show that it is wrong, two, to prevent it from happening again, and three, to console and heal. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Parliamentary Representative for St. George, Town of St. George. Honorable Representative for St. David.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to join in the issue that is before the House now, because it's very topical. It's also a very emotional one. And I listen to some of the calling programs, and you know, every time something happens, government gets the blame. Whichever government, not only this one, government. Whereas a matter like this, Mr. Speaker, you have to think about, first of all, the family, the role of the parents, the school, and take a holistic approach. Once you start to apportion blame to government, then everybody else put up their hand. And that is the wrong approach. So all I need to say is today, to everyone listening, it is all of us responsible, the whole of society, every sector, the churches, the NGO, the parents, the school, together. We must work together and put aside this political aspect. Try to put politics in everything. We're not solving any problem that way. No, we can't solve problem that way, Mr. Speaker. So I appeal to the entire nation that this is a time where we all should come together and work for the common good of society. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Representative for St. David. Honorable Representative for St. Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to add my concerns to those expressed earlier by various members of this Honorable House. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the very obvious problematic situation that confronts us, I, as a parliamentary representative, just wanted to, through you, express condolences to the family, as they originally hailed from St. Mark, but they had moved to the southern part of the island quite some years ago. And the people of St. Mark, we join with Grenada, Carriacou, and P.T. Martinique in mourning this tragedy, but we also join in a special way with the family to mourn the tragedy as well. Mr. Speaker, I want to also echo what was said from the member of St. David's, because this is a national problem. And if we start picking hairs and throwing blame, we will never address the problem. It has been said, and in many cases it is true, that we are very vocal when in the immediate aftermath of such an unfortunate event. But gradually, it dies away and we seem to become complacent. And I say seem, because in a lot of quarters, this may not necessarily be so. And I know that in our cabinet and among us as women in the cabinet and in government, we have agonized over the broader issue of violence, domestic violence, and violence in general in our country. While comparatively, we can still say that this is a safe country, and in promoting Grenada, Carriacou, and P.T. Martinique, we do use it a lot. And I guess some outsiders might want to detract from the fact that Grenada is indeed relatively extremely peaceful when we look at what is happening in other countries. But one episode of violence is too many. One death is too many. And therefore, we have to come together to deal with it. I just wanted to also say, I know the acting minister in the Ministry for Social Services, Social Development, would have mentioned the substantive minister, but I also want to say I know how grieved she is at the situation. I know her ministry has come up to cabinet with a number of initiatives. I know that in the next few days or weeks, when the budget is presented, that a very important line item will be there, speaking to a financial allocation to deal with the broader issue of domestic violence, which of course includes sexual violence as well. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, we do have plans, we are working on it, and this matter will not die or be buried with the victim, but we will be more energized to continue to mobilize, to agitate for better means to educate, to inform, to develop our youth in the proper direction, and also, should the necessity arise, where it has to be a court matter, that the court is appealed to do certain things and to take certain steps that would assist in minimizing. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to support what has been said, and I know I want to assure this Honorable House that we are looking at a holistic approach, and one that will be sustained over the next weeks and months and years, so that our country may be one day free of violence to anyone in this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you kindly. Honorable Leader of Government Business. Honorable Representative for St. Patrick West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also rise to express my concern with regards to the unacceptable level of violence and abuse of our young people, which I regard as un-Grenadian. However, Mr. Speaker, there is a ray of hope for our young people. And I want to make reference in particular to the outstanding performance of our junior aquatic team, our swimming team, at the recent OECS championship, where our young swimmers have now copped 14 OECS titles, including 3 consecutive wins as of this year. And Mr. Speaker, our young swimmers are doing well under not very good conditions. For one, I have visited the area, and the pool that they do have to practice in is just a 25-meter pool, whereas the standard should be 50 meters. And the conditions, Mr. Speaker, of the washroom facilities and other supporting facilities are really not ideal. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I would like to pledge the support of the Ministry of Youth and Sports to assisting our young swimmers, to providing them with the necessary support so that they can do even better at the international level. Also, I would like to congratulate the management, the parents, who are providing what I call full-time support to the young ones. I've been there, as I said, and the parents are all there to provide that level of support to the young swimmers. And this Mr. Speaker, I think augurs well for the future of this sporting activity in Grenada. So once again, congratulations to our young swimmers, and I do wish them well in all future endeavors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Representative for St. Patrick West. Honorable Representative for Carrick-O-Pity Martinique.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I really rise to join my colleagues in expressing deep sympathy, of course, on my own behalf and on behalf of the people of Carrick-O-Pity Martinique for this terrible tragedy that hit our nation. Mr. Speaker, speakers before me made mention of the importance of working together to deal with this. The social partners, Mr. Speaker, the religious communities, Mr. Speaker, political organizations, the government, everyone must get together and realize this is a national problem. It's not who try to get to the family first, it's who endure and try to help to bring some solution, Mr. Speaker, to this problem. Grenada is crowded with a very dark cloud today and since that event. And so it is our responsibility to make sure that this does not happen again, Mr. Speaker. And so the Minister of Education just spoke, but I believe that the schools also do have a meaningful role to play. And Mr. Speaker, this begins in very, very, very early stage. We cannot wait until it's too late. Mr. Speaker, I call on everyone in Grenada, Carrick-O-Pity Martinique to play their part in making sure this does not happen again. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Representative for St. Carrick-O-Pity Martinique. Leader of Government Business? Oh, sorry. We go with the lady first. Honorable Representative for St. Andrew South West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I too join with my colleagues to express my sympathy to the family. It is a very, very sad situation for all of us here in Grenada and Carrick-O-Pity Martinique. This is not something that we can, take in our stomachs. I'm very saddened by that. I listened to Minister Pierre this morning, and my heart turned over as she spoke, and I feel that pain myself. Mr. Speaker, this is a call for all of us, every person in Grenada, Carrick-O-Pity Martinique, to come together, all our communities, the groups in our communities, the churches, every single person. We must take this incident, this is very serious. We need to make that call. We need to hold hands. We need to unite. We need to work towards curbing this disease, I would say, that is, among us. Mr. Speaker, it also speaks to rehabilitation, not for the persons who commit the crime. As a young person in a community and other persons around who have similar behaviors, and so it calls for strengthening the rehabilitation of some of these young people in the communities. There are a lot all over Grenada, in my area, all over. There are young persons who get themselves involved in all of these crimes, and so we need to look at the rehabilitation piece. How do we deal with rehabilitating these young persons, 17, 18, 19 years and beyond? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Representative for St. Andrew South West. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the number of contributions and the passion with which they were delivered reflect the importance that we as a government attach to the broader issue facing us, of which the last and maybe other incidents are simply manifestation. And the contributions significantly point towards the fact that these must be addressed. So I simply want to echo all of the sentiments expressed here this morning. But Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister who is away, and on my own behalf, I'd like to take this opportunity to extend condolences to the family and to all of Grenada, because we all mourn with them. Mr. Speaker, perhaps it is opportune that our head of government is away at this point in time. And having spoken to him, he has realized, he has always known, but he has seen it for himself, what our publicity, particularly our negative publicity, can do to our country, because he's out there and he's looking in. I say this, Mr. Speaker, to ask us as Grenada to follow some of the urgings from the members here, that it is an issue that we collectively must deal with. And we must deal with it for the benefit of our people and our country, Mr. Speaker. I was speaking to two visitors yesterday who asked, and they looked at the connotation of the reporting, both on the Facebook and both on the social media and the normal channels, the hard copy and the voice, areas of disseminating our news, Mr. Speaker. This is a time when we must come together as a country to deal specifically with this idea and to stay together. And we do have the structures. All we have to do, Mr. Speaker, is to make the structures work, but with one firm purpose, for the benefit of our young people, and Grenada as a whole. So I want to reiterate, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's concern from abroad and the fact that he has asked to pass on his condolences to the family and the nation. And I do support all that had been said before by my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Leader of Government Business. Honorable members, I was just thinking that when I hear of the swimmers and I hear of this 6 or so students who scored very well in the CXC, coming in the first 10 in certain subject areas, and our footballers who did so well against Trinidad, we had a lot of bright moments, but it takes just one spot of stain to spoil the whole cloth. Let us, as we express our concern and our sympathy, do not forget the parents of the person who is charged. We sometimes forget them. That parent is hurting the same way, because that parent is losing a child also. And the stain and stigma that would remain would be even maybe harder to bear. So let us not forget them in our prayers. Let us not forget them as we extend our sympathy. The tendency is to sympathize with the victim and the parents and relatives of the victim. But I think that that person is also a victim of some sort of circumstance. If he's a 17-year-old, maybe he was a student in some institution. I don't know. But as was said before, this is a much larger picture. As we go around, we are looking and seeing more and more of our young people engaging in violence. And sometimes we say sexual violence against our women and girls. And as an afterthought, we say, and the boys too. It's about the same. The violence to the boys might be even more. When you look at the number of young men that are suspended from schools and sent out and never gone back into schools and are forgotten. And when they return, if they return, they ask, what you come back here for? That is a serious case of violence against our young men. And these young men are turning out and are reacting in ways that are not commendable. And strangely, sometimes their reaction is against their sisters and brothers. So we have to look at this in a broader sense. I attended a graduation some time ago in a school where 4.5, 5 years ago, 135 students were admitted. And at the graduation, there were 45 students graduating. 16 of those were boys. Where are the others, I ask? And this is an everyday picture, almost in every graduation. Where are our young men? They fall by the wayside. They are suspended from school. Nobody follow up with them. And they turn around and react. I'm not saying that they wouldn't, but I'm saying the whole system has to address the violence against our young men. The emphasis is on our young women. Wonderful. But let us not forget, the equal emphasis must be on our young men. I sympathize with the families of both people, of the victim and of the person who is charged. And I pray that God would have mercy on all of them. Honorable Parliamentary Representative for St. Patrick East.
Mr. Speaker, I rise also to share my concern, joining with my other colleagues in expressing my concern and my sympathy. I want to express my sincere condolences on behalf of myself and my family to the parents of the victim, the little young lady, and also to the family, relatives, and friends of the offender. Mr. Speaker, as you rightly said, we should not forget the family of the offender, because they too are in pain, and they too are feeling the effects of this awesome tragedy. Mr. Speaker, this is something that we should not look at lightly. In fact, the entire island of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique is in mourning. And if you listen around, everybody who speaks of this incident, they speak with a passion. But Mr. Speaker, there are those out there who are pointing fingers and trying to make this a political affair. But Mr. Speaker, we have to bear in mind that we are a people. We are a nation. And this is not a political issue. This is a national issue. And we should treat it as such. And we should all come together, join hands in hands together, and see how best we can work together as a people to curb this problem. Our young people are in danger. Therefore, we need to seek solutions, to strategize, to see how we can protect our young people, Mr. Speaker. And so, I really empathize, I sympathize with the family. I know the grief, the pain that they are going through, Mr. Speaker. And so too are the family, the friends, and relatives of the offender, Mr. Speaker. And we should all pray. We should all put our hearts together and pray, Mr. Speaker, for the family and relatives of these people. I do hope and I pray that this young Ariel Bola did not lose her life in vain, But this should be a wake-up call for all of us as a nation and as a people to stand up and to protect and to conserve lives of our young people. May she rest in peace, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Representative for St. Patrick East. Honourable Representative for St. George South.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. I rise to give my comments as it relates to this unfortunate incident. I was waiting until the end because this is ministerial statements, and of course I am not a minister. But I will take the opportunity to also express my profound condolences to the families of those involved in this very tragic incident. And, you know, Mr. Speaker, I've been quite vocal myself about this the last few days because, of course, you know, this specific incident ended very tragically. But this is something that goes on every day. And sadly, there are hundreds of cases like this. But it is because of the fact that the Ministry of Social Development and the women's groups and people are taking initiative to make it okay for those who are being abused to come out and say something. We're hearing more and more of these stories every day. And it's because mechanisms are being put in place that those who are being abused can come forward and speak. And we want to encourage them to do that. There are many young children and young women, and like you say, also young boys who are being abused every day. And we have to deal with the perpetrators. The sad part, Mr. Speaker, is that in some cases, it is condoned by those close to them. So we need to put laws in place, Mr. Speaker, and make sure that we address this situation swiftly and harshly so that we can stop it from continuing. And I know that the Ministry of Social Development, I'm sure, is putting things in place. And like the member for St. Mark's mentioned, I look forward to hearing in the upcoming budget what will be happening. Mr. Speaker, I also want to add to this to say that, you know, our housing situation is also being looked at. And housing is another reason because of you have sometimes 3 generations living in one house. So we need elbow room. And we need all of these contribute to social ills. Mr. Speaker, I want to again express my deepest condolences to the family of both parties involved in this horrible, tragic incident. And rest assured, we will continue, all of us as a country, as a nation, we have to continue to work together. We have to be our brother's keeper, Mr. Speaker. We have to look at what's going on at the neighbor's house. It's our responsibility. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Representative for St. George South. Honourable Representative for St. Andrew Northeast.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and a very pleasant morning to my colleagues and friends. I think, Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss of me as a representative myself if I did not express the pain and trauma that we all feel as a result of this tragedy that most of us this morning have spoken about. And I want to join with all my colleagues to express my sympathy as well to the families that have been involved. I too, Mr. Speaker, have been listening to the debate about what should and should not be done, about the rights and the wrongs, about the laws that should be enacted. And Mr. Speaker, I thought about it for a moment, and I don't know if we are all seeing things the same way. And I do believe that at this present time in Grenada, the sadness that has covered us all as a result of the incident has made many persons' passion a bit more livelier than before. But as mentioned by one of the reps before, Incidents like this, Mr. Speaker, seem to be happening every day and almost everywhere in our country. There's a lot of silence. There are some people who speak out. When it gets extreme, we then recognize that something should be done. And I ask myself, Mr. Speaker, if the enactment of laws is what is necessary or what will bring changes. Or whether it is the fact that the various arms of society should take a deeper look at the degradation of our families, the absence of fathers from the home, not being there to help grow and train our children, both boys and girls. The fact that churches today has become more a thing of fashion than an institution that is there to help to train and develop and build the right character in our people. The fact that our schools, Mr. Speaker, prepares our children to pass exams and not necessarily to be better citizens. And so, Mr. Speaker, I believe that we must take a deeper look at what are the root causes of some of these problems. The fact that as politicians, Mr. Speaker, it is better for us to fight each other on petty issues as opposed to looking at what are the real issues that confront our people and our country. Maybe as sad as this situation might be, Mr. Speaker, it might just be opening up an opportunity for all of us to really take a closer look at the job that we are doing. Whether or not we can pat ourselves on the shoulders because we have done well in many instances, but some way, somehow, the real issue of the growth and development of our people has been left behind. And so I use this opportunity at this time in this honorable house, Mr. Speaker, to ask us all, not just those of us who are sitting in this house, I'm saying the nation, to really think. Sometimes when we walk out with our placards and we say we are in support or we march against the violence against women and young girls, if we look really closely in the mirror at ourselves and ask ourselves, am I really doing something positive to bring about change? Or in my own life and the way I live it and the examples that I show, that I'm leaving room for incidents like this. So you have rightly said, Mr. Speaker, the accused is a young man. I am not here to defend what he did. I don't believe what happened. If he is the guilty one, it was good. But does any one of us know what trauma he was going through? And I hope that my statement would not be misconstrued. I am not excusing anything. I'm just saying that we really need as a society to think harder, to look deeper, and not just plaster it and saying that we need to put laws. Because you put laws and the people are supposed to live by the laws. And the laws to be implemented and enforced would need people. But wouldn't it be better if we develop our people, our families, look out for each other more, our neighborhood become a neighborhood where we care for each other much more, and we point out the wrongdoings, and that as a people, we work together to bring about change than pointing fingers at each other whenever. I've heard even this morning a program, and the present government and Prime Minister seem now to be responsible for the incident that would have happened. But I think it's an incident that all of us must take a closer look at, and all of us must decide, institutions, individuals, communities, the country as a whole, what more can we do to ensure that we do not see a repeat of that, and of course, that we see improvement in the way our people live and act with one another. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Representative for St. George Northeast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pleasant good morning. Mr. Speaker, I too rise with a sense of deep and profound sadness to express sympathies to the families involved as I join with my colleagues here today. And I can only pray that the peace of the Lord will resonate upon them so that they can overcome this sense of loss that we all are feeling today. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Representative for St. George Northeast.
Item 13, personal explanations.
I'd just like to remind this Honorable House that the Honorable Representative for St. Andrew Northwest is out of state on government business and won't be joining us today. The Prime Minister is also out on government business. Thank you.
Item 14, motions.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I beg to move the motion standing in my name, which reads, whereas debate on the gracious address delivered by the Governor General on the occasion of the ceremonial state opening of the 6th session of the 9th Parliament on Friday, 20th October 2017 was deferred to a date to be fixed. Be it resolved that the said address be further deferred to a date to be fixed by the House.
Honorable Representative, the question proposed is that debate on the gracious address delivered by the Governor General on the occasion of the ceremonial state opening of the 6th session of the 9th Parliament on Friday, 20th October 2017 be further deferred to a date to be fixed. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the next motion, 14B, standing in my name, which reads, whereas the standing order number 69, subsection 1 of the House of Representatives provides for the election of a committee to be known as a Public Accounts Committee, and whereas it is further provided that a committee be elected at the first sitting of each session at which business of the House other than the reading of the throne speech is transacted, be it resolved that this Honorable House doth now elect its members to the said committee.
Honorable members, the question proposed is that the House now elect members to serve on the Public Accounts Committee. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the standing order 69, subsection 1 indicates that the Public Accounts Committee must be not less than 3 members, no more than 5 members. It further indicates, Mr. Speaker, that none of these persons must be a minister, a parliamentary secretary, or in general associated with any of the work of the government, Mr. Speaker. We know on the member for St. George Northeast has repeatedly said when he attends the Public Accounts Committee meetings, the fact that this is a position for members of the House of Representatives. We understand, Mr. Speaker, why we had a joint committee, because of the numbers, to make up the numbers, and because we need to show and we need to operate so that the Public Accounts Committee can have the oversight over the accounts and the works of the government. However, Mr. Speaker, he has repeatedly reminded us that we were bordering on the line of the Constitution as the representatives, and monies and accounts are for the House of the Representatives. In this context, Mr. Speaker, I would like to now propose that since we do have now the room and the facility to do so, that the members of this Public Accounts Committee would be, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Tobias Clement, Honorable Clifton Paul, or the member for St. Patrick's East, Honorable Otway Noel, member for St. George South, and the Honorable Roland Bowler, member for St. Andrew Northeast. Mr. Speaker, I beg to propose that the chairman of the Accounts Committee be the Honorable Tobias Clement, member for St. George Northeast.
Honorable members, these are the names of the members nominated to serve on the Public Accounts Committee. Honorable Tobias Clement, Chairman. Honorable Clifton Paul. Honorable Alexandra Otway Noel. Honorable Roland Bowler. Are there any objections to any of the names being or the persons identified? No objections. Honorable members, the Public Accounts Committee comprise the persons Honorable Tobias Clement, Honorable Clifton Paul, Honorable Alexandra Otway Noel, and Honorable Roland Bowler. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the motion 14C standing in my name, which reads, whereas standing order number 70, subsection 1 of the House of Representatives standing orders provides for the appointment of a committee to consist of a chairman and 2 members to be known as the Standing Orders Committee, which shall be elected as soon as may be after the beginning of each session. Be it resolved that this Honorable House doth now appoint the members to the said committee.
Honorable members, the question proposed that this Honorable House now appoint members to the Standing Orders Committee. Those of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I now beg to appoint the following members to the Standing Orders Committee. Member for Carriacou and Petit Martinique, the Honorable Elvin Nimrod as chairman. Honorable Gregory Bowen, member for St. George Southeast, member. Honorable Tobias Clement, member for St. George Northeast, member.
Honorable members, the members identified to serve on the Standing Orders Committee are the Honorable Elvin Nimrod, Honorable Gregory Bowen, and Honorable Tobias Clement. If there is any objection, please make it known now. Honorable members, the members of the Standing Orders Committee are Honorable Elvin Nimrod, Honorable Gregory Bowen, and Honorable Tobias Clement. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move motion 14D standing in my name, which reads, whereas Standing Order number 70, subsection 2 of the House of Representatives Standing Orders provides for the appointment of a committee to consist of the Speaker as chairman and the 4 members to be known as the House Committee. Be it resolved that this Honorable House doth now appoint the 4 members to the said committee.
Honorable members, the question proposed is that this Honorable House now appoint 4 members to serve on the House Committee where the Speaker is the chairman. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I propose for approval of the House that The other 4 members of the committee be the Honorable Roland Bowler, Honorable Emmeline Pear, Honorable Alvin Dabrio, and Honorable Delma Thomas.
Honorable members, the members identified and nominated to serve on the House Committee are Honorable Roland Bowler, Honorable Emmeline Pear, Honorable Alvin Dabrio, Honorable Delma Thomas, and the Speaker of the House as Chairman of that committee. Are there any objections? No objections. Honorable members, members of the House Committee are the Speaker as Chairman, Honorable Roland Bowler, Honorable Emmeline Pear, Honorable Alvin Dabrio, and Honorable Delma Thomas. Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move motion 14E standing in my name, which reads, whereas Standing Order number 70, subsection 3 of the House of Representatives Standing Orders provides for the appointment of a committee to consist of the Speaker as Chairman and 4 members to be known as the Committee of Privileges, which shall be elected as soon as may be after the beginning of each session. Be it resolved that this Honourable House doth now appoint the 4 members to the said committee.
Honourable members, the question proposed is that the members to the Committee of Privileges be now be appointed. Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the following members be on the committee, of which the Speaker shall be Chairman. The member for St. Mark, the Honourable Clarice Modest Cohen. The member for St. David, Honourable Oliver Joseph. The member for St. Andrew, Southwest, the Honourable Yulan Bain Hosford. And the member for St. Patrick West, Honourable Anthony Boson.
Honourable members, the members nominated to serve on the Committee of Privileges, and let me say to you that the Committee of Privileges is a committee that is required to relate with the FROC, that's the Fiscal Responsibility Oversight Committee. So the FROC must submit their reports to the Committee of Privileges, who then present to the House and so on. So it is a committee that has some serious responsibilities. And the members nominated are the Speaker as Chairman, Honourable Clarice Modest Cohen, Honourable Oliver Joseph, Honourable Yulan Bain Hosford, and Honourable Anthony Boswin. Are there any objections to any of the names? No, honourable members. The Committee of Privileges now comprises the Speaker of the House, Speaker as the Chairman, Honourable Clarice Modest Cohen, Honourable Oliver Joseph, Honourable Yulan Bain Hosford, and Honourable Anthony Boson. Honourable Representative for St. David.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to move the following resolution standing in the name of the Minister for Finance. Resolution for the purposes of Section 12 of the License Act, Cap 172. Whereas it is provided by Section 12 of License Act, Chapter 172, hereinafter referred to as the Act, that the Minister may by order alter conditionally or otherwise the fees for license mentioned in the first schedule of the Act, either by way of increasing, decreasing, or annualizing the same or any of them, and whereas it is provided in the proviso to Section 12 of the Act that before any such order comes into effect, it shall have been approved by the House of Representatives. And whereas it is now expedient that the License Order 2017 attached hereto as the schedule be approved by the House of Representatives, now therefore be it resolved that pursuant to the provision of Section 12 of the Act, that the Licensing Order 2017 now be approved by the House of Representatives. Mr. Speaker, the primary objective of this licensing order is to correct a typographical error in Part 2 of the first schedule to the Licensing Act. In its prescription of the annual license fee applicable to bond warehouses established with Customs and Excise Department. The item prescribing these fees describe three categories of the bond warehouse with different fees applicable. It states that the bond, if you take out a bond, so Mr. Speaker, you go to Customs, and you need to establish a bond. And based on the value, then you pay the appropriate fees. In categorizing the three bonds, there was an error in the second bond. It says the bonded warehouse with bond exceeding $100,000 and between $100,000 and $200,000, that is the next category, and the bond exceeding $250,000. So if the value of the goods in the bond is $100,000, you pay a licensing fee of $12,000, and if it is between $100,000 and $200,000, you pay a licensing fee of $16,000, and if it is above $250,000, then you pay a license fee of $20,000. What you will notice, Mr. Speaker, is that between the second and the third category, there is a gap. So this order is to correct it, but maintaining the same fee of $16,000. So it will say, whereas with the bond exceeding $100,000, but not exceeding $250,000, this new category has been established with the same rate of $16,000 as the license fee. So this resolution is to simply correcting that error that was there in outlining the three different categories, because you had to capture all appropriately in order to charge the fee. And that is the purpose of this resolution, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, the question proposed is that pursuant to the provision of Section 12 of the Act, that License Order 2017 be now approved by the House of Representatives. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Item 15, bills.
Honorable Representative for the Tongue of St. George.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to introduce for first reading a bill for an act shortly entitled the National Insurance Amendment Act 2017.
An act to amend the National Insurance Scheme Act, Cap 205, shortly entitled National Insurance Amendment Bill 2017.
Honorable Representative for the Tongue of St. George.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the relevant standing orders of the House be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting.
Honourable members, the question proposed is that the relevant standing orders of the House be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting. Honourable members, the question is that the relevant standing orders of the House be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honourable Representative for the Tongue of St. George.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the second reading of the bill. Mr. Speaker, this bill, the National Insurance Amendment Act 2017, seeks to address, I don't want to refer to it as an anomaly, but an issue that has arisen. In essence, contributions made to the NIS, be it by employees or employers, belong to the employees. The beneficiaries, technically, or only beneficiaries to date of a payout by the NIS can only be the employee. This bill seeks to address an issue where, with government and other larger corporations, that they may, when an employee is on sick leave officially, that the relevant institution may choose to pay because of electronic payments, etc., choose to pay the employee the full amount as though they were at work for the entire month or period, and then seek to get remuneration. Right now, the only process technically following the Act is that the employee receives the payment from their employer and will also receive as beneficiary payment from the NIS and then have to reimburse. This Act seeks to place an amendment which will give the NIS the authority to pay employers in this instance, but only after receiving written permission from that said employee. So it seeks to adjust that and allow smooth transactions where employer-employee have direct deposits or electronic payroll systems, etc., that such occurrences of sick leave and payments, etc., create an imbalance. So in government in particular, it will allow the government of Grenada to continue to pay public workers directly, even if they were absent. But those who are absent on sick leave and claim from the NIS, that the NIS will directly reimburse the government of Grenada for that period. It allows the NIS, as it sees fit, to also extend this facility to other entities as the NIS sees fit, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Honourable members, the question proposed is that the bill be read a second time. Honourable Representative for St. Andrew Southwest.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to give my full support to the amendment of this National Insurance Amendment Bill 2017. Mr. Speaker, as what exists at the moment, Mr. Speaker, in the case of illness of an insured employee, the employer claims ceases to pay the full salaries of the employee, to the employee. Mr. Speaker, that portion of the NIS benefits can only be paid directly to the employee. Mr. Speaker, this, I believe, Mr. Speaker, fragments the disbursement of the employee's salary and benefits. Mr. Speaker, what I believe this bill seeks to do is to amend Section 36 of the Principal Act to insert a new subsection which gives the employee the right to assign that portion of his or her benefits to his or her employer. Mr. Speaker, I believe this has a very positive effect in that it may allow the employer to continue to pay full salary and benefits to the employee in a seamless manner. In other words, Mr. Speaker, the employee will continue to receive full salary from his employer without interruption during the period of illness. Mr. Speaker, I think this is a plus. Mr. Speaker, there are cases where an employee would have assigned his entire salary or a very significant amount to a financial institution to cover mortgages or payments or other obligations. And breaking up the salaries could have a negative effect on the smooth operation of this person's business. So, Mr. Speaker, as I said before, this is very simple. This is a simple amendment, and I give it my full support.
Thank you, Honourable Representative, for Zindanju Southwest. Honourable members, the question is that the bill, the National Insurance Amendment Bill 2017, be read a second time. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled National Insurance Amendment Bill 2017.
Honourable Representative for the town of St. George.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the House resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause.
Honourable members, the question is that this Honourable House resolves itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honourable members, this Honourable House is now in committee.
Clause 2, Amendment to Section 36 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 2, Amendment to Section 36 of Principal Act forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 1, short title.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 1, short title, forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honourable Representative for the town of St. George.
Chairman, I beg to move that the House resumes and the Chairman of the committee reports progress on the bill.
Honourable members, the question is that this Honourable House resumes and the Chairman of committee reports progress on the bill. Those of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honourable members, this Honourable House now resumes. I have to report I have to report that the bill was considered by a committee of the whole House and passed without amendment. Honourable Representative for the Tongue of St. George.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the Chairman's report be adopted.
Honourable members, the question is that the Chairman's report be adopted. As many are of that opinion, say aye. Of the contrary opinion, say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honourable Representative for the Tongue of St. George.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the third reading of the bill.
Honourable members, the question proposed is that the bill be read a third time. Honourable members, the question is that the bill be read a third time and passed. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled National Insurance Amendment Bill 2017.
Honourable Representative for St. Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to introduce for first reading a bill for an act shortly entitled Grenada Investment Development Corporation Amendment Bill 2017.
An act to amend the Grenada Investment Development Corporation Act number 30 of 2016, shortly entitled Grenada Investment Development Corporation Amendment Bill 2017.
Honourable Representative for St. Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the relevant standing order of the House be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting.
Honourable members, the question proposed is that the relevant standing orders of the House be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting. Honourable members, the question is that the relevant standing orders of the House be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honourable Representative for St. Mark.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the second reading of the bill. Mr. Speaker, this bill was first introduced in this Honourable House in 2016, and it sought to give more latitude, more financial legroom, or more legroom for financial management to the Grenada Investment Development Corporation, so that they can borrow, they can lend money, they can hold their own accounts and make them financially viable, since they deal primarily with business investment. And it was felt that they too should be managers of finances. However, Mr. Speaker, later on in 2016, by means of Act number 31 of 2016, an amendment was again introduced on that bill to make certain changes. However, Mr. Speaker, the outcome was not what was desired, and therefore we find ourselves returning again to seek an amendment to the amendment that was erroneously written or interpreted. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to just explain where the error is and what it seeks to and what we are seeking at this time to amend. Mr. Speaker, Clause 6, Section 18 of Clause 6 of the Principal Act has 9 paragraphs, paragraph A to I. And the intention was that paragraph B only should have been amended. So paragraph B originally read from the Principal Act, it read such sums of money as may be allocated to the corporation from any loan funds. And the amendment that was intended was only for this paragraph B, which should have read, such sums as may be available to the corporation from loan funds from any source. The other paragraphs, A, C, down to I, should have been left intact. However, by some error, what was read was that Section 18 of the Principal Act should have been completely repealed and leaving only the amendment that was recommended for Section B. So as it is, all of the other paragraphs, A, C, D, down to I, would have been completely excluded, and the recommended amendment for Section B would have been the only paragraph left standing all by itself. So, Mr. Speaker, we are asking here that we revisit Clause 6, Paragraph 18, and replace or put back all of Section 18, which would have included Section A, the amended Section B, and all of the others down to Section I, so that we will have the replacement that was recommended for Section B. I would like to read it again. Such sums as may be available to the corporation from loans fund from any source, and that the rest of it that was originally in the Principal Act remain as is, or as it was, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I commend this bill to this Honorable House.
Honorable Representative for St. David.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the amendment as presented by the member for St. Mark's. There was a simple error in when the amendment was made. It said to repeal and replace Section 18 with Paragraph B. You see what it says here? Say repeal and replace the whole of the paragraph with B, whereas all you intended to do was just to amend B, you know. But he said repeal and replace it. So we had to come back because the only thing that would have been left is B, because the whole of the 18 would have been gone. So the correct formulation should have been Section 18B of the Principal Act is repealed and replaced with the words. So now it's to, because as indicated, you have in Section 18, you're from A to I. So therefore, this simple amendment is to rectify it by correcting the error that was made at the time of the amendment, and therefore I wish to give my full support to this amendment.
Honorable members, the question is, the bill entitled Grenada Investment Development Corporation Amendment Bill 2017 be read a second time. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled Grenada Investment Development Corporation Amendment Bill 2017.
Honorable Representative for St. Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the House resolves itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause.
Honorable members, the question is that this Honorable House resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable members, this House now stands in committee.
Clause 2, commencement.
Honorable members, the question is that Clause 2, commencement, forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 3, repeal and substitution of Section 18 of Principal Act.
Honorable members, the question is that Clause 3, repeal and substitution of Section 18 of Principal Act, forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 1, short title.
Honorable members, the question is that Clause 1, short title, forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable Representative for St. Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that the House resumes and the Chairman report progress on the bill.
Honorable members, the question is that this Honorable House resumes and the Chairman of Committee reports progress on the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable members, the House resumes. I have to report that the bill was considered by a committee of the whole House and passed without amendment. Honorable Representative for St. Mark.
Mr. Speaker, I beg that the Chairman's report be adopted.
Honorable members, the question is that the Chairman's report be adopted. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable Representative for St. Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the third reading of the bill.
Honorable members, the question proposed is that the bill be read a third time. Honorable members, the question is that the bill be read a third time and passed. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Bill for an Act shortly entitled Grenada Investment Development Corporation Amendment Bill 2017.
Honorable Representative for St. Patrick West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to introduce for first reading the bill for an act shortly entitled Customs Amendment Number 2 Bill 2017.
An act to amend the Customs Act Number 9 of 2015, shortly entitled Customs Amendment Number 2 Bill 2017.
Honorable Representative for St. Patrick West.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the relevant standing order of the House be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting.
Honorable members, the question proposed is that the relevant standing orders of the House be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move for the second reading of the bill. Mr. Speaker, the Customs Amendment Number 2 Bill of 2017 seeks to effect 5 major amendments to the original Customs Act Number 9 of 2015. The first amendment, Mr. Speaker, as elaborated in Clause 2, seeks to insert a new Part 2A, addressing the customs computerized system. The second amendment involves the insertion of a new section 20A, which addresses advanced passenger and cargo information. The third amendment, as identified in Clause 3 of the bill, seeks to insert 4 new sections 185A, 185B, C, D, and E, which create offenses in relation to the customs computerized system. An amendment, the fourth amendment, Mr. Speaker, involves the insertion of a new subsection 2 in section 264, empowering the minister by regulations to impose penalties for breach of regulations. And the final amendment, as elaborated in Clause 5 of the amended bill, provides for the insertion of a new Schedule 1A, which sets out the required information under the Advanced Passenger and Cargo Information Regime. Mr. Speaker, to take each amendment. Insertion of Part 2A, which is the customs computerized system. Mr. Speaker, one may ask, what is this customs computerized system? And in essence, Mr. Speaker, it involves the use of a digital or electronic platform to promote customs reform and modernization, and to replace years of inefficient manual systems with a more progressive computerized clearance system capable of catering to present-day demands of huge volume of cross-border and international trade. In essence, Mr. Speaker, we are saying that we have to move away from the manual methods of doing business at the customs and to get on board with the modern age technology, whereby the digital platform is now the basis for doing business at the customs. Mr. Speaker, we all know that the customs is responsible for a major component of government's revenue, and therefore it is important that all measures be taken first and foremost to ensure that we have a modernized customs department that is functioning efficiently. And this, Mr. Speaker, can be aided and abetted by the use, as I said before, of the electronic platform to assist custom officers in the performance of their duties. But, Mr. Speaker, we are all aware that with this new electronic platform, there could be serious breach in security. And therefore, it is also important that the appropriate security measures be put in place as part and parcel of this computerized system that we are talking about. You need security, for example, to safeguard the integrity of the system and to protect against unauthorized users, because someone could hack into the system and could put your entire custom department at risk. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we are saying that this amendment is extremely important as we move forward to ensure that we have a more effective and efficiently functioning customs department. The second amendment, Mr. Speaker, but before I go to the second, it should be noted that although it was mentioned in the original bill, or it is mentioned in the original bill, this computerized system, it was never really implemented, and now we are moving in that direction to give full effect to this computerized system at the customs. The second amendment, Mr. Speaker, makes reference to what we call the advanced passenger and cargo information. And again, Mr. Speaker, in this modern world, having such a system can significantly reduce on time being spent either by passengers at ports of entry or goods on the dock or cargo. If we have what we call pre-clearance, information being submitted in advance of the vessel or passengers moving from one port to another, so that when you get to that port, you do not have to go through that encounter long delays if you have what we call pre-clearance of goods and of passengers. And we notice that that is what is happening in most of the ports of entry in the advanced countries, that you do not have to wait and submit information that you have already submitted prior to the vessel or the airplane leaving the home port to the port of final destination. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, this again will reduce cost, it will reduce time, because we know that in business time is money, and the more transactions you have to do, the higher the cost, and therefore by having this in advance, you can reduce transaction costs as well as time, and therefore create a higher level of efficiency in doing business. Mr. Speaker, there is a penalty for non-compliance in submitting this information, and that penalty is a fine of $20,000 or imprisonment of 1 year if that information, if the respective persons do not comply with this requirement of providing advance information on both cargo and passenger. One may ask, Mr. Speaker, does this apply to the yachting industry? And this question was raised, and it is reported that the yachting fraternity does not have to submit the APIS, Advanced Passenger Information. But rather there is a what we call the Caribbean Customs Law Enforcement Council Regional Clearance System, or what we call Sail Clear, whereby yachtsmen will have to go online, provide this information, which is a regional system it will enter into a regional system that will be shared by the various ports and custom authorities in the different territories. However, Mr. Speaker, the captain of the yacht will still have to report, present his documents on entry, but because of the advanced information provided electronically, there will be minimum delay in affording clearance of the passengers or the captain or whatever cargo they have on board. So really, while you do not have to comply by what in the Customs Act itself, but because of this regional system and because you need to promote the yachting industry, you do not want too much of a burden or too much encumbrances, and therefore you have this regional system through which they can operate. The third amendment to the Principal Act, Mr. Speaker, involves the insertion of 4 subsections to Section 185, which really create offenses in relation to the implementation of the customs computerized system. Mr. Speaker, What are these offenses that can be created that must be attended to? Falsification of information, for example, when you falsify record in the system. And under this section, the person who stores data or message or information that is not correct, or where you duplicate information electronically, you commit an offense, and therefore there is a fine of $100,000 with a term of imprisonment for 5 years. In essence, you cannot falsify, you cannot duplicate any electronic information that is provided through the new computerized system. The unauthorized use of the customs computerized system. Again, only authorized users will have access to the system. And if someone attempts to use the system without proper authority, that person commits a crime and is liable on conviction to a fine of $100,000 with a term of imprisonment for 5 years. Another offense is the unauthorized modification of customs computerized system. And the person who contravenes this section commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of $100,000 with a term of imprisonment for 5 years. So they all carry the same fine or confinement of $100,000 or 5 years, Mr. Speaker. And another offense is the unauthorized obstruction of the customs computerized system. And this speaks to a person who interferes with, interrupts, or obstructs the lawful use of the system, or impedes, prevents access to, or impairs the usefulness of any program or data on the system. And anyone who commits such an offense, again, is liable on summary conviction to a fine, again, of $100,000 or 5 years in prison. And the final offense, unauthorized interruption of the customs computerized system. And under this section, a person who unlawfully engages in a conduct which causes the system to cease functioning, whether permanently or not, commits an offense, and again is liable to the same fine of $100,000 and or imprisonment of 5 years. The fourth amendment to the Principal Act, Mr. Speaker, as reflected in Clause 5, requires the insertion of a new subsection 2 after Section 264, subsection 1 of the Principal Act, where the penalties for breaches of the regulations can be imposed by the controller of customs. And the final amendment, as reflected in Clause 6, provides for the insertion of the new Schedule 1A, which addresses the advanced passenger information. And here, Mr. Speaker, you have various aspects of the schedule in terms of information, the advanced information that is required. You have information relating to the manifest of the vessel, where you have to provide basic information. Information on the passengers, as we normally do when you fill out what you call the immigration form. So once all of these, Mr. Speaker, are provided and submitted electronically, you can have what we call pre-clearance or reduced time in clearance of goods or passengers entering ports in other destinations. And in essence, Mr. Speaker, these are the major amendments, and as I said, the effect is to give us a more efficient customs department where, as we know, revenue collection is key for the finances of the country. And once we have the system functioning properly with all of the necessary safeguards and the penalties that will be imposed on breach of any of those regulations, Mr. Speaker, I think we will be better off and we'll be on par with some of the more advanced countries with regards to implementing what we call e-commerce and using their kind of digital platform to improve efficiency and administration of the Department of Customs. In addition to providing regular training, because if the workers are not trained, then that will impede progress in those particular areas. And Mr. Speaker, with those few words, I wish to commend this bill for second reading.
Honorable members, the question proposed is that the bill Customs Amendment number 2 Bill 2017 be read a second time. Honorable Representative for St. Andrew Southwest.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to give my full support to this bill, Customs Amendment number 2 Bill 2017. Mr. Speaker, this bill may be viewed as a bill to protect the integrity of the customs computerized system. Mr. Speaker, I would not go into much detail, but I would speak of excerpts from the bill that I think are very tangible. Mr. Speaker, where systems are used by employees or agents external to the customs, Mr. Speaker, it speaks to the deliberate acts of tampering with both the data and the software which operates the system. And Mr. Speaker, above it all, delineates the fines and terms of imprisonment which may be imposed on individuals who may tamper with the systems. Mr. Speaker, in addition, it also speaks to address the integrity of the advanced passenger and cargo information. And failing to comply, Mr. Speaker, there are penalties in that regard. Mr. Speaker, I wish to now refer to some specific areas of the bill. 185A, this deals with the falsification of records in the customs computerized system and the associated penalties. Mr. Speaker, this is a very serious offense, Mr. Speaker. In other words, Mr. Speaker, where persons have entries to the system, knowing very well that those entries are incorrect or maliciously done, the appropriate penalties are set aside in the amendments. Section 185B, Mr. Speaker, unauthorized use of the customs computerized system. Again, Mr. Speaker, these fines and terms of incarceration is a significant deterrent towards the misuse of the system. 185D, Mr. Speaker, unauthorized obstruction of the customs computerized system. These again, Mr. Speaker, these fines seriously suits the act committed. Tampering with the records of the customs service of the country is serious and ought to be dealt with in a very serious manner. 185E, and we can go on with all the areas that the MP for St. Patrick's, Northeast, West, spoke about, Mr. Speaker, in detail. Unauthorized interruption of the customs computerized system. Again, Mr. Speaker, the Customs Department is an extremely important arm of the government as regards to revenue collection. And Mr. Speaker, unauthorized and or malicious interruption of such a system is extremely serious and should have serious consequences. So, Mr. Speaker, in all, what we are trying to do here, this bill seeks to do, is really to protect the integrity of the customs computerized system. Mr. Speaker, all of those amendments are pivotal to the successful operations of the customs computerized system, and I'm here giving it my full support.
Thank you, Honourable Representative for St. Andrew Southwest. Honourable members, the question is of the bill entitled Public Utilities Regulatory Customs Amendment Number 2, Bill 2017, be read a second time. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled Customs Amendment Number 2, Bill 2017.
Honourable Representative for St. Patrick West.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the House resolves itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause.
Honourable members, the question is that this Honourable House resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honourable members, this House now stands in committee.
Clause 2, insertion of a new part in the Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 2 forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 3, insertion of new section in Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 3 forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 4, insertion of new sections in Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 4 forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 5, amendment of Section 264 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 5 forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 6, insertion of new schedule in Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 6 forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 1, short title.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 1, short title, forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that the House resumes and the Chairman of the committee reports progress on the bill.
Honourable members, the question is that this Honourable House resumes and the Chairman of committee reports progress on the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honourable members, This Honorable House resumes. I have to report that the bill was considered by a committee of the whole House and passed without amendments. Honorable Representative for St. Patrick West.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the chairman's report be adopted.
Honorable members, the question is that the chairman's report be adopted. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the third reading of the bill and its passage.
Honorable members, the question proposed is that the bill be read a third time. Honorable members, the question is that the bill be read a third time and passed. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled Customs Amendment Number 2 Bill 2017.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to introduce for first reading the bill for an act shortly entitled Public Utilities Regulatory Commission Amendment Bill 2017.
An act to amend the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission Act Number 20 of 2016, shortly entitled Public Utilities Regulatory Commission Amendment Bill 2017.
Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the relevant standing orders of the House be suspended in order to take the bill through all stages at this sitting.
Honorable members, the question is that the relevant standing order of the House be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the second reading of the bill.
Honorable members, the question proposed is that the bill entitled Public Utilities Regulatory Commission Amendment Bill 2017 be read a second time. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this bill and the one to follow emanate from the EXERA project, Eastern Caribbean Energy Regulatory Authority, and they changed to Regulatory Association. Mr. Speaker, this is a project financed by the World Bank for the reform of the energy sector in the OECS. Grenada and St. Lucia are signatory to the $10 million loan, and with those financings, Mr. Speaker, we have engaged consultants. We've had consultations with various stakeholders in Grenada and St. Lucia. And Mr. Speaker, there is the grouping of the other countries together with Grenada and the St. Lucia, even if they are not participating in the loan financing arrangement, they meet and we all agree on the way forward and how the energy sector in the OECS should be reformed. The regulatory process undertaken in every country is debated at those fora, and we come out with an effort and we come out with a consensus on the reformation of the energy sector in the region, Mr. Speaker. When we passed these bills in 2016, I indicated, Mr. Speaker, that by the end of the year, we will come with all the necessary amendments because we still engaged consultants and we still look at what we have. and we look at where we should be going. And with the act in effect, we look at the response of the consumers and the other stakeholders, Mr. Speaker. Today, we are here to effect those amendments. Mr. Speaker, the first amendment to deal with the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission is with respect to the qualification of members to sit on the commission. The commission, Mr. Speaker, is now in place. We have been constituted. And we have listened to the parties and even engaged consultants further to provide us with guidance on the amendments. Mr. Speaker, in order to sit as a commissioner, you must have left a utility to which this act applies 5 years or longer. So you cannot leave, if the act applies to Nawassa, you cannot leave Nawassa in a senior position 2 years after and come to be a commissioner. You will not be qualified. Mr. Speaker, another similar point is a person who held a senior in a public utility to which his or her employment was terminated less than 5 years, a person who was a director in a public utility subject to this act. If you are a director and did not give up that position with less than 5 years elapsed between the point of you trying to come to sit as a commissioner, you do not qualify. Listening to certain persons, and some of the experts believe that Grenada does not have the wide number of people. So you have a very limited number of people they feel that could serve on the board. And so we should relax this. But we must remember, Mr. Speaker, that we're part of CARICOM and that we are part of the OECS. And the St. Lucia is another member country. So if you don't have the persons in Grenada, if all of them have less than 5 years between which, then we could go to the other countries, Mr. Speaker. So I mention this because there is an error to be corrected in the bill as is. It has dropped the years from 5 years to 2 years, but this is an error. So at the committee stage, we want to put it back to 5 years. But more so, Mr. Speaker, a legitimate complaint is if you are getting more than $2,000 in dividend from any utility under the dictates of this act, you're not qualified to sit on the board. The point came up that you cannot tell the utilities when to increase the dividends. The shareholders and the directors may simply increase it. So you may be getting $1,900, but suddenly they increase it after a good year and you get $2,100. You're now disqualified because the law says that you shall not receive more than $2,000 in dividends. And this is of critical importance. The proposal now before us, Mr. Speaker, is that you put it as a percentage. So even if your monies go up or go down, you will not be disqualified. Because now the criterion is not to do with actual monies. But Mr. Speaker, wherever you go, while you say dividends, the issue is the quantum of money that you get as dividends. This is where a person may be tempted to do things as a commissioner against the interests of the consumers in order to safeguard the quantum of money. So you're putting it as a percentage. Yes, it's okay. But the real criterion is the money that you receive. So while 1% looks small and reasonable, you should be getting a small amount of money at $2,000 or $1,500, even at $3,000. If you increase it, you may say that will not affect your decision to reduce the rates for the consumers. But by reducing the rates, you're reducing the profits, and the amount coming to you, Mr. Speaker, will also be reduced. Let us look at one particular case, Mr. Speaker, of what 1% will do. In one case, Mr. Speaker, Grenlec paid out $52 million in dividends in 1 year. They borrowed 35 and they put the 15 that they had as free cash. Now, if you have 1% share, how much money will you receive, Mr. Speaker? And when I looked at it again, I went to everybody else. That 1% share will give you $520,000, Mr. Speaker. So if you're sitting as a commissioner and you're getting $520,000, is the temptation great to safeguard that $5,000 against the benefit of the consumers? We understand that the $520,000 for 1% is a unique case. But let us say, Mr. Speaker, the dividend that you pay off is $6 million, which more or less to the norm. What is per 1% of $6 million? If you have 1% share, you will be receiving $60,000. Mr. Speaker, is $60,000 a temptation for somebody to say, let me safeguard that $60,000. I don't want it to reach 20 or 30. So I will do something as a commissioner to postpone the hearings, to do what it is so that I can get this. Let us even go further, Mr. Speaker, that the dividends paid out to 100% shareholders is $3 million. What is 1% of this, Mr. Speaker? $30,000. Would somebody be tempted at $30,000? This is what this Honorable House must contemplate when we put the percentage. So in discussions, we will see we have it as 1%, but we see it really should be in the vicinity of 0.1%. Or a range. You may say this is happening to one company, but it will not happen to the other utility. So we have to address this matter. When another utility is brought under the Act, we may have to come back and say, well, the 0.1%, which will give you the 3,000 or 6,000 or the 52,000, might be more in line, not to bring temptation to any commissioner. This, Mr. Speaker, is of critical importance, and so all members, must decide and discuss this, Mr. Speaker. So that's the first amendment to the bill. We do have important but not as significant amendments. One, we have complaints and claims. So we decide that complaints and claims more or less mean the same thing, so we remove claim from the Act and we define complaints to include what we thought a claim was. A claim and a complaint were used sort of synonymously in the Act, Mr. Speaker. The third amendment, Mr. Speaker, has to deal with changing the reviews and how reviews can be done, Mr. Speaker. Right now, the Public Utilities Commission, under the amendment, will initiate a review at the instance of the minister, at the instance of the public utility, if they think it's fit. And these are the two areas. Previously, you could have triggered a whole review, which is a lot of work, if one consumer comes in and complains, but I don't like the rate, this one charge, I don't like the rate. That should not trigger a review. Yes, the commission will deal with it, but they cannot come and say, do a review. A review has a lot of consultation, it's very costly, etc., and somebody must pay for it, Mr. Speaker. Then this clarifies, again, Mr. Speaker, it clarifies how you can do what we'll call a non-scheduled review of tariffs. And the commissioner, give the commissioner powers to set the consumer classes. Right now the utilities say what is industrial, what is domestic, and what is commercial. Now, Mr. Speaker, the commission will have the power to do so. Obviously, they would not do so in isolation, and they would not make any changes that will disturb the status quo to an extent that it will bring the system into disrepute, Mr. Speaker. And the commission shall establish a procedure for review of tariffs and it shall ensure compliance with requirements prescribed in the enactment related to tariff. Some of the amendments, Mr. Speaker, came from some persons feeling that the minister has too much powers. And so we remove the fact where the minister will set procedures of how you carry out investigation and deal with the consumers. We say let the commission do it itself. The only concern here, Mr. Speaker, is whether or not a powerful customer, be it a utility or not, will say, I'm not following these procedures because they're not laid out in regulations. We believe that if the law says the commission will regulate how you have its hearing and its session and so forth, so be it. But we know of instances, Mr. Speaker, because we have experience with the NTRCs in the region and the powerful providers who will look at any issue to delay and to do certain things. And so the minister must make regulation after regulation after regulation to curb some of these practices. So we'll give the commission here a chance. We could always say we could come back to make regulations if people will say I'm not submitting this before 10 days when in so-and-so case I have 2 weeks to do it, etc., etc. But we simply wanted to cross the I and dot the T, Mr. Speaker. The removal of Section 5, Mr. Speaker, of Section 24. And it says, subject to subsection 6, no award or other determination of the Commission in any matter brought before it under this Act shall be challenged, repealed against, appealed against, reviewed, squashed, or called into question in any court of law. This was in the first draft, it is in the Act. And we thought that this should be taken out. What you say in the commissioners make a decision, and you say you can't appeal against it, you can't do anything, etc., etc. This is normal, Mr. Speaker, in the developed country. When we listen to the FCC charging people billions of dollars, the FCC, they have the laws. You don't hear them going to any court or to go to this. They can charge and they can do things. But we recognize it is alleged that the staff of the NCC is more than the staff in the public service in Grenada. Nearly tens of thousands of people. And their budget is perhaps more than the budget of Grenada. So they have the wherewithal to do things. They have a legal department. They have an interface department. So they can do these things. You don't appeal against their decision. So we thought that since we have not reached that stage of yet, that this particular piece should be removed and deleted, Mr. Speaker. We removed the subsections 48 with the minister making certain procedural moves. I've mentioned that, Mr. Speaker. And also, Mr. Speaker, the transparency and the consultation. This we know about. We simply add this one: the Commission shall foster transparency while exerting its powers and duties, and shall state the reasons for its decision and publish its decisions. So when they make a decision, they will publish it, and they will see the reason for it, so everybody will understand why this was done. They will make available relevant files, information, studies, and documents related to the sectors to which this Act applies, except those containing confidential information. And the amendment makes it abundantly clear that the utilities under the purview of this Act must provide the information requested. Right now, Mr. Speaker, there are certain utilities that give you only the published accounts, audited statements, but you cannot get into the management account. You cannot get from whom did they purchase, you cannot get this, you cannot get the prices and so forth. They could only give you the profit and loss. But all of these things must be given to the Commission, and the Commission will protect confidential information that will cause a competitor to gain advantage on you, etc., Mr. Speaker. So all in all, these amendments here, they are not large, but they are important and critical to allow the Commission to function. And as I indicated, Mr. Speaker, that first part, the qualification factors for somebody sitting at the Commission, we believe is the most important a component of this amendment bill. And so I commend this bill for its second reading.
Honorable Representative for Carrick-Confetti Martinique.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity afforded me to make a contribution in this very important bill. Mr. Speaker, I also want to commend the presenter for the very eloquent way in which he presented the bill. Of course, that has diminished substantially what I have to say because he had been in such great details. Mr. Speaker, I must say that this bill has my unconditional support, and I think, Mr. Speaker, that might be the general feeling of all members here, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in order to fully understand the importance of this amendment, it is necessary to first understand the reason, the necessity, or the need for having a regulatory system. Mr. Speaker, I cannot say that Grenada is extremely aggressive in terms of regulation. And I am pleased that the initiative, of course, is supported by our CARICOM sister states and OECS as well. Because, Mr. Speaker, basically, a regulatory commission or a regulatory body is usually set up to protect the consumers, let's face it, from arbitrary and unreasonable acts on part of big business, whether it be, and especially in the case of monopolies, whether it is electricity, water, cable, etc. Of course, we know that we must have a buffer because, Mr. Speaker, it is known and it is accepted fact that business are in the business to maximize their profit. They are not Sunday school teachers. They are there to maximize their profit. And in some cases, not all, but in some cases, of course, they go to lengths, of course, to, I don't want to say cheat, but of course to marginalize the consumers. And so, Mr. Speaker, this is why it is so necessary to have those entities. Mr. Speaker, I want to commend the drafters, the framers, and whoever for this bill. Because, Mr. Speaker, this bill actually put us in a position where we can boast, of course, that we are taking or we have taken measures and actions to protect the consumer, Mr. Speaker, who normally is helpless in this situation because the consumers are not regularly able to stand up to the big entities, Mr. Speaker. And so, as a government, we must be seen as trying at least to protect the interests of the consumers, Mr. Speaker, from arbitrary and capricious acts on the part of course, big business, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I particularly like the cautious attitude that was taken in terms of the qualification for members of the Regulatory Commission. Because just listening to what the presenter said, it seemed to me that it's very, very tempting for any member of the Commission with this kind of money that I'm hearing. And of course, that surely can influence that commissioner to make decisions that are not in the best interests of the consumer or of course, the country as a whole. Also, Mr. Speaker, I am impressed with the section that moved to reform in terms of what we might call making it making it more transparency, so you can actually see and know what happens within the business of the commission and, of course, the entity. So that transparency part where you got to open your books and all these good things, I highly commend this, Mr. Speaker, because, of course, in totality, it is putting the region and, of course, the individual government in a better light. As I said before, of course, we are not known to be regulatory sensitive in a sense, maybe because of our small size, maybe because of the small number of business and entities we have to deal with. But of course, Mr. Speaker, it doesn't matter size. I think we do have that obligation to make sure we want to regulate properly the industry and to make sure that the consumer, of course, is treated in the way it deserves to be treated. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Representative for Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my colleague, the member for Carriacou and Petit Martinique, for his contribution. Very well put, showing the importance, Mr. Speaker, of the Public Utilities Commission. I wish to reiterate that the Commission is in place. And so the regulatory work, has started. The Act provides for their giving advice to the Minister for their regulating rates, the rates that those persons referred to as self-generators in the Act, who will put up the panels and so forth on their roof, solar panels, and who will generate excess electricity, the price at which they sell to the utility will be fixed by the Commission, Mr. Speaker, and no longer by the utility. The contract that they give to you when you joining up, saying X, Y, and Z, must be approved, Mr. Speaker, by the Commission. So we expect within a couple of months and so forth, when they look at the contract, you may see amendments, all in order to safeguard the consumers. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, they are setting rates. And they are not there to set rates to destroy the utility. We look at the industry. In the water sector, what is the rate of return on investment? So if the rate of return generally is 8%, then that's where they will set your price so that you can work efficiently and make your profit. If the rate of return in the sector is 10%, they will work the price accordingly, Mr. Speaker. Presently, we know what happens. When you generate your electricity after investing $50,000 or $60,000, then you must take all the electricity, give it to the utility at a certain price, and then the utility sells that electricity back to you at a certain price. Obviously, Mr. Speaker, you cannot expect the rate that you sell to the utility to be the same as the rate that the utility will sell to you. But that is the purview of the Public Utilities Commission. So they have a lot of work to do, Mr. Speaker, in furthering and enhancing the reduction in our carbon footprint, the use of renewable energy, and the price of electricity to the consumer. So, Mr. Speaker, I commend this bill for its second reading.
Honourable members, the question is that the bill be read a second time. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled Public Utilities Regulatory Commission Amendment Bill 2017.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the committee dissolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause.
Honourable members, the question is that this House resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause. Those who are of that opinion say aye.